times. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Upstairs to the Right music channels, Sunday at Mike's live stream. Always a pleasure to be here, guys. Always a thrill to be here with you. Always want to start out by saying thank you so much for spending a little bit of your time with me. Time is a valuable thing, and for you to spend a little bit of yours with me, that's always greatly appreciated. So, thank you so much. Let me do my check here, see if everything lines up. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Scott, I thought that was funny. Documentaries about old music. Yeah, they don't make them like they used to. That old saying really holds true. I think we'll touch into that a little bit tonight in the live stream. We'll talk about that subject and a few more things. Mr. Watson, welcome. Welcome, sir. How you doing? Welcome. I put out Ben. Hey, how you doing, sir? Welcome. Hey guys. A happy Sunday to everybody, wherever you are, morning, afternoon, or evening. Thank you so much for showing up, guys. I always appreciate it. Yeah, I put out a video, the bedroom producer myth, why gear isn't the problem in my regular content. Two things I'll say about that. First thing I'll say is I'm really happy that I finally figured out how to use that new 4K lens. It really is nice. I've started to figure out how you light something like that. And the next thing is I just like overall that format. I think you're going to see a lot more in the house, uh, or in house, in this channel of that kind of format of discussions. Um, I really think that it had a few good points in there. Sometimes I just kind of I had that script or the one that I'm talking about tonight. One or the other was going to be the discussion, and one was going to be the live stream discussion. Kind of flipped a mental coin and went that route. I'm glad I did. And not a lot of people have watched it yet, but I think that it's something worthwhile. At least it's an intriguing topic, and I hope that you guys do get a chance to look at it if you haven't seen it. I would appreciate that. Speaking of other people's channels, right before I came on, I was watching Gary's Guitars, and I really like Gary and his channel. Um, Gary's guitar channel. He's a small guitar shop owner in Indianapolis, I believe, is where he's at. And he really, honestly, just gives the best takes on things that are going on in our world. This is a guitar gear channel, oriented channel. So, of course, I'm always interested in other guitar gear oriented channels, especially the thought provoking ones, guys that are in there doing the business like me. He's got a shop. I do importing independently. But just to hear, his viewpoints and his takes of things is always just refreshing. I have to be honest with you. And this, Steph, hello from Amsterdam. Hey, Steph, how you doing? Well, I'm here in Amsterdam too. So, a hello from Amsterdam to you as well. I'm very Amsterdam right now. um, I like his take, and you should go over to his channel. And it's titled "Tin My Tinfoil Hat Conspiracy." Now, I really don't like it when you have to start out or preface any kind of discussion of things that I think are very logical once you present them in a logical manner by saying, well, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. When, you know, there was a time where certain things that were considered conspiracy theories that actually turned out to be facts. So I was sorry that he had to start out that way, but when he got into it, the gist of it is that private equity firms own or control most of the production and distribution channels and sales channels for guitar gear, amps, pedals, guitars, things of that nature. The Black Rocks of the world. And he gave a great analogy about humans and bees and how, we've got it so that we can go up to the bee's nest and extract honey, and the bees continue on, as opposed to a bear who will just destroy the whole nest to get to it. It's worth listening to, but I think the fact that he, in that analogy, saying that the private equity, we're the bees, but we're the bees, by the way, and the private equity companies are taking the honey, the money, whereas before in this ecosystem of ours, it used to be supported by mom and pop shops, and not just in this arena of gear, but as he was pointing out, a baker, a launder, a restaurant. And that money used to circulate within the communities, either locally or even a little broader than that. But when you take that equity out and extract it out, and it doesn't go within the community, even though, it's a race to the bottom is the end point of that. And he didn't go down that road. He mentioned that he didn't touch upon what I just said, but that's what I took away from it. He had another point which is just as bad, but both of them are quite true, and I hadn't thought of it that way. I was like, wow. Well, when you control all the distribution channels and and production, networks, then basically you've got a monopoly there, and you can extract the wealth out of it. Which I think is the reason why, again, I talk about innovation and why I'm not seeing a lot of it. As much as there should be, there really should be a lot more. But worth looking at his video. Is very thought provoking. And I think tonight's discussion is going to fall in line with that as well. The fact that there's no more guitar gods. I This is an extension of my discussion that I was having about the bedroom producer myth, why gear isn't the problem. If you haven't checked that video out, please do, like I said. But I was hinting upon the fact that I started out by saying that there's no major hits, albums of significance that are produced in the so called bedroom environment. In other words, I'm not saying there's not songs that are produced, and I'm not saying that there's some songs in the top 10 that weren't done that way, or at least in some way initially started that way. That's not the point. I'm talking about something that is universally accepted as fantastic. In other words, that oversaturation of music out in the market has also caused there to be kind of a kind of vibe among most listeners. And most listeners used to be active listeners, and now people have become passive listeners. When you're an active listener, um, you engaged in getting your music in ways that you would drive your car to a shop to buy an album, or you would stand in line for X amount of time in order to get a ticket to see that band, or things of that nature. When it all went online, and when this comfort kind of thing came around, then the passiveness became a problem, because, yeah, well, I'll get it online, see if I can get tickets or not, or, that's out, I'll see if I'll download it or not. It wasn't as engaged, and it also, again, that physical tactileness of holding it. When you got online, you held the ticket. You had the tickets in your hand. You take them, put it in your pocket, put it in your wallet, or you go around the corner and sell it to a scalper. Or with that album, you had it in your hand. You go home, you put it on your record player, you play it. Again, these things contribute to that. And the guitar gods thing, I think, kind of ties into that a little bit as well. I think there may be that's why there's two thoughts that I was having this week, and in preparation for putting content together. And so tonight I want to talk about that a little bit. You know, I've pointed out in the past that there really are no real guitar heroes anymore. I mean, by that, that somebody who everybody thinks is, you know, on a universal level, again, there are niches of everything, but a niche doesn't make a market necessarily. It doesn't, regardless of what they try to tell you. I know this because I deal in a so-called niche market, vintage Japanese guitars. But uh, a shredder, a type of person that made people want to rush out and buy a Strat or a Les Paul or something like that. In my collective memory, the last time that I can remember seeing that, honestly, would be something like Nirvana. And suddenly everybody wanted to go out and get a guitar and play like Kurt Cobain. And that was the last time that I have to be honest with you. People talk about John Mayer, but I actually never heard of large groups of people rushing out to want to play, to get a Strat after John Mayer's albums came out. No insult to John Mayer. I like a lot of his tunes, but I'm just saying. And, Hendrix in the 60s, Clapton and Page in the 70s, Eddie Van Halen in the 80s, John Forsythe from Red Hot Chili Peppers. Probably I also put in there along with Nirvana in terms of that one of those people who got people out there wanting to play. To my memory, and then after that, it kind of just not only s- drops off; it precipitously drops off. So that's what I want to set up for as a preface of tonight's discussion. Frederick Rogers. All right. How you doing, sir? How is everybody doing? So tonight I want to talk about why that happened. I want to get into that a little bit and why actually though it may not be a bad thing at all. Because maybe the death of the guitar god might actually end up being the best thing that ever happened to the instrument after all. Maybe we don't need to have, that anymore. And anyway, it's unlikely that that will occur anyway. We need a new system. Scott says, I think most people who want John Mayer guitars are already avid guitar people. I agree with that. There was nobody who wasn't already playing guitar that rushed out to want to listen to get a guitar on behalf of something they heard from John Mayer. They wanted to play in his style or get his sound, but it wasn't somebody who heard and said, hey, I want to go out and learn how to play guitar. There was a result of. I just don't believe that. Revolution is my name. Welcome to the live chat. Thank you so much for showing up. So appreciate it. Today's music scene is dominated by producers, not players. Fair enough. Songs are built on beats and samples instead of solos. Millions can shred, but no one defines the sounds of a generation anymore. Yeah, that is part of it. And again, as I was saying in my preface of this discussion, a lot of that comes about from the culture that went from people being active consumers of music to passive consumers of music. That really really ties in. I think that a lot of stuff springs from that, a lot of troubles. And in any case, as a personal prejudice, I have to say it's funny that Scott and I were chatting about this and right before we went live here about the shredders, or the soloists, the instrumentalists. I never did like them. I never did. I have to be honest. I was never into Steve Vai or anybody of that nature. I respected the guys like Van Halen who could outshred the shredders, and write a great tune. To me, that was that was a complete package. If you were just a shredder writing songs, you were missing something. So maybe that's not a bad thing. Back then, like I said, you had to go see your heroes live. And also, and I hate to date myself, but again, this is I'm going to tell you about the old system, the way we used to do. This is my old man rant a little bit. Although I don't like to look at myself that way, but it is kind of true that you would have to read about them in magazines. If I wanted to read about, the latest review of an album, I would go to Rolling Stone usually. I generally read Rolling Stones for their reviews of albums. Like new Prince album is coming out. I haven't bought it yet, but I would go in the bookstore and look at a copy of Rolling Stone and read and say what they said about it. For example, like Around the World in a Day. I remember doing that distinctly. And that's how you got your information. And you had to save up for a ticket, and your ticket may cost you 25 bucks if you want a good seat. I'll tell you a story. I was I went to high s There was a 80s, 90s, 80s and 90s singer named Jody Watley. She actually used to be part of a group named Shalimar, if you guys know any of your R&B group history. And her sister went to my high school, and I started going out with her sister a little bit. And I took her to go see Duran Duran at the at that time it was the Forum in LA. And I, being the naive, not being around, the sisters of pop stars and how snooty they are, I thought that I was doing good. I paid 25 bucks per ticket. That's a lot. In 1985, that was not a small amount of money, 50 bucks for two tickets. And she actually complained about where we were sitting. So imagine now, if I paid, what would it be, 125 per ticket, you know? Yeah. And by the way, I didn't stand in line. I wouldn't stand in line like I did for those tickets. I had to stand in line to get those tickets. Um, and uh, just that engagement nowadays is lacking. Fun fact, by the way, after high school, she went on to become a porn actress. I'm just letting you guys know. You can look all this up. I'll let it go from there. But in any case, back then you had to engage. You had to actively engage. It was more than just flipping to a page on your screen on your phone. And that's just the way it was. A revolution is my name. Virtuosity isn't rare anymore. It's everywhere. What's missing isn't talent, it's mystique. Very good point. And actually, wow, very, very, very good point. Because one of the things that got tonight's thought started in my mind is I was flipping through YouTube and I came across a 5-year-old girl who was playing, or 5 or 8, or some people, but anyway, a child who was playing Eddie Van Halen's Eruption solo note for note. And I thought to myself, wow, we have really gotten to a point here where children, children, like are aping, as we used to say, or copying, or playing somebody's licks like that. And I I thought to myself, well, that's the first thing I thought to myself, which I think most people would think is, well, that's cute, I guess. Um, it kind of, in a way, in my mind, I know this is weird to say, and I'll probably take heat for saying it, but it kind of degraded Eddie Van Halen in a way, and elevated him at the same time. It degraded him in the sense that children can play like him, something that he worked really hard to do. There's kids out there who can do it, which gets to the point that you were making. Revolution is about the virtuality not being rare; it's everywhere. It elevated him in the sense that there are children out there, young people out there who are playing his music. So it's a kind of mixed bag thing. But at the end of the day, it's just a stunt. It's it's circus. It's circus. Maddie, I didn't see you sneak in here. Where did you sneak in here? There you are. Hey, how you doing, Maddie? Welcome. Um, it's kind of circus-like, and there's just that. New Love, wasn't that her song or no? Yeah. So I'm looking for New Love produced by Andre Simone, Prince's old buddy from back in the day. Yeah, Jodie Watley. Uh, and her sister was Michelle Watley. If any of you guys are interested in looking at some of her work she did shortly after high school, it may be a little faded now because that was a long time ago. If you're into vintage stuff, that's bad. I lived in LA and I went to a very Beverly Hills 90210 type high school. I went to University High School in West LA. And I have to tell you, I lived and I was a aspiring musician. I got stories now that I think about them, but I got stories. But that is one of them. When I was a teenager, I used to hang out at a local music store just to meet other players around town. I still know some of those guys, Mr. Watkinson says. Yeah, the music store had its place in the community as much as a community center or anything like that for musicians. And I think that the Guitar Center on in Hollywood that I went to back in the 80s benefit why I like going up there and why the people who worked up there. And it's because they were all musicians on the strip too, and they were very knowledgeable. And then now, fast forward today, and you don't have that. So certainly, it was a gathering spot for knowledge as well. Revolution is my name, but maybe that's not tragic. Maybe it's evolution. Well, that's my point. Is that we are evolving, but what are we? All of these discussions, the last three discussions that I've had live and in my regular content, is really asking the broader question: is we're evolving. What are we evolving into? What is this thing going to be? Gary was thinking that since the guitar market, another one of his points is since the guitar market was artificially pumped up by these private equity firms in order to get people to get their money out of their bank accounts and into buying things, that when they pull the plug on that it's going to be no bueno for the guitar gear market. And that would be an evolution as well. Not all evolutions, not everybody makes it out of an evolution. The fire that once burned now lives in thousands of bedrooms and basements. The age of the guitar god didn't die; it just became decentralized. Well, catch my do take a look at my video that I just put out on my channel, the bedroom producer myth. And when I start talking about changing taskmasters, that myth of independence, of that myth of decentralization is truly a myth, because if you go to Spotify, if you don't put out X amount of the algorithm says you're not really getting enough views, they'll kick you off the platform. It's no different than back in the day when you were signed to a label. If you didn't sell enough albums, you got kicked off the label. The taskmasters are changing and becoming worse. And when AI gets involved, then it's just not great. We're evolving into machines, Matty Two Hat says. Makes sense. We spent so long making machines more human. Why not just meet them in the middle? Well, I know a lot of Japanese guys who are looking for wives who are working on just that. Them and Howard from Big Bang Theory are working on that. Yeah, man, dig that because again, like I said, it's just this illusion. It's like that. It's why I keep bringing up that Frank Zappa quote because it really is. Anthony, what's happening, sir? Good to have you here in the live stream. Oh, good to have you guys as always. Everybody's so loving and supportive of this channel. Can't get over it. Now, so I had it. There was a certain inaccessibility, but now everyone's accessible. Every riff, every lick, every trick is on YouTube now, and you got 5-year-olds playing Eruption, which, which, you know, which again is part and parcel of of what was kind of being mentioned there earlier by Revolution is that the myth disappeared, the magic disappeared, the mystique disappeared. That's correct. The guitar solo used to be the moment of magic, you know. Think of Michael Jackson's Beat It. Probably from that period of time, the best hybrid of a metal and a R&B song that you're ever going to get. A brilliant piece of composition from that standpoint because it brought those two things together in a universal way that everybody dug it. If you had to, you know, you had guys who never thought about playing guitar. They're playing an air guitar along with Michael Jackson beat of all different types of people, and that was a moment of magic. Now the guitar solo actually is kind of optional. It used to be iconic in pop music, but now it's not. Most of the chart songs don't have one, and even rock, the genesis of the rock solo doesn't feature rock solos in the songs very much anymore. Can't stop playing music. Welcome to the house. How are you doing? Welcome, welcome. The gang's all here. It's a good thing, you know. And the idea of the guitar god, the untouchable lightning, and out of a bottle guitar soloist, no longer fit into our modern world. It no longer fits in our modern world. We've become too connected, too exposed, too self-aware, I'd say. And maybe that's okay, but that's kind of worship that we used to have for the rock god doesn't exist anymore. Mostly, again, like I said, the mystique, you know, is gone. The next guitar god won't be built by TikTok trends. They'll come from someone who doesn't care what's trending. Yes, they won't care about the trends of the trends. I hope, but again, my my suggestion is that because of this connectivity that we have today, you can't have a mystique about yourself. There's YouTube channels that that do way better than mine. I could start a YouTube channel tomorrow where I talk about celeb gossip and things of that nature, or uh, even keeping it within the rock world. I could talk about this rocker got caught sleeping with this chick, and how's it going to affect this tour and all those things. And I tell you that I would have easily 3 times the amount of subscribers that I have right now, just within a few months. But and even though I just told one, but again, that's my story to tell about me and Michelle Watley. But I honestly think that that kind of thing is not really for me. And whereas, because I think it contributes to destroying that mystique. And maybe in the back of my mind, growing up in that mystique and growing up in this kind of environment where you learn that, um, it's just something that I don't find attractive, but people do, and they feed off of it. And that's just in this genre. At the other tables in my metaphorical cafeteria of YouTube, at the other tables, especially the entertainment gospel table or movie tables, things like that, it's even more so. If you're an actor or an actress, you can't even take a leak without somebody writing about it. There's just no privateness, private. There's no privacy for the star. So there's that. Before social media, scenes made stars. LA, Seattle, London, you had to belong to a movement. Rock needs tribes again, local scenes that live like cults, not content, not hashtags, just believers. Well, yeah, I grew up again in LA, and I one of the scenes was up on the Sunset Strip, up there at the Roxy. Eh, I remember that, and it was happening. It was vibrant. There were people up there, and not just on the weekends. Every night of every week, it was something. There was something going on, and eventually, I moved up there. Had a house up in right off Sunset apartment. Counterculture again. Revolution is my name. We talked about counterculture and the origins of counterculture. Counterculture is a term that has a lot of strings attached to it. I think countercultures tend to be organized, whereas movements, real organic grassroots movements, which are very rare these days, of course, as the title precludes, their grassroots. Two kind of different things in my mind. We might not have guitar gods anymore, but we have thousands of insanely talented players. You can scroll through Instagram or YouTube or TikTok and find, again, like I said, a 5-year-old playing Eruption. It's crazy. The technical level with the musicians that I'm seeing is higher than ever. Higher than ever. Technical level. How that would translate into a structured song or thing, I don't know. How they would be able to take that technicalness and come up with something, that technicality, and be able to make it translate into something of their own, developing their own style that they could then play on a record or something like that. I don't know. I just feel that a lot of these guys, if you put them in a studio and you say, okay, come in on the one, I don't know how many of them would be able to. They're just my thoughts. But it's more about community in the end, where, as was being suggested by Revolution is My Name, is where we need to go to. So we're all thinking on the similar lines there. And the celebrity needs to go. Do you know the old Greek word for actor is another word that we're familiar with, rooted in another word we're familiar with, hypocrite? You see, during the Roman era, actors and musicians and people of that level, of that nature, were considered to be very low in the social structure. They were certainly below the gladiator class, without any question. They may have been as low as to be lumped in with prostitutes as well. Prostitution, being an actor or a musician, those are all considered to be on the same level. And that kind of social stigma to actors and actresses had some positive and some negative things to it for the actors and actresses. But certainly, when you got into the during the period of time from the Roman era into the beginning of the 20th century, then in the beginning of the 20th century, you had external groups like the Rosicrucians and things of that nature who elevated acting into and actors into celebrity. And so when you started elevating the actors and actresses to celebrity, then what happens is uh, you put them in a social hierarchy and you created a mystique around them, and then it gave them a voice that now people are sort of turning against and rejecting. And we're kind of going back, the point of this is back to kind of viewing them not as low as we used to in the Roman era, but not as high as we did in the latter part of the 20th century. So, you know, that's okay because it means that, you know, everybody has kind of a level playing field again in some regards, in that regard, in terms of being able to show off their God-given talent. Michael Watson, guitar solos and songs need to have soul, not nonsense. Yeah, I remember reading, not reading, I was watching, speaking of funny, Scott, talking about documentaries of old music. I was watching that Eagles documentary again, and one of the things that the Eagles, why they got away from their first producer and moved to their second producer is because of the studio environment. And I remember, who was it? Somebody said, "Well, well, all I ask is that you give me time to write my guitar solos. Instead of just say, hey, play, mate. It's how you hit the one play. And the guy said, yeah, that's fine. Take whatever time you want to do. And they wrote very thought. That's why Hotel California is a very thoughtful guitar solo, because these guys took the time to think about it. They didn't just hire somebody to come in and say, "Hey, play me a solo in this part." And I know the guys who do that, but it's that the reality is it's not the same thing as writing a guitar solo. You guys know what I mean. It's just one of those things that made them soulless, I think, Michael. Daddy Two Hats. Wild. I wish I made money every time the industry screwed me. Yeah, you know. Scott says we need guitar music writers more so than guitar players these days. Yeah. Or an environment where that's something that people are presented, because you're only going to listen to what the major distributors put out to you. Again, like I said, that illusion of freedom, you know. People aren't actively engaged. They actually sit back and say, "Hey, dude, give me the next thing. Give me the next thing. Give me." Whereas when I was younger, it was like, "Hey, what's going on?" Or "Did you hear about that?" Or "I want to go see that." It was an active thing as opposed to a passive thing. This switch from an active thing to a passive thing in so many aspects of our lives, by the way, has been detrimental. It really has been. I've said it before. I don't chase names. I chase inspiration. If a $40 pedal gives me a spark, as you guys know, then like this Pocket Master, then I'm good. I'm shocked that for 50 bucks, I could get something that really works for me. And I don't care what anybody says. I have been making albums for over 30 years now, over 40 years. Actually, I hate to say, oh crap. I've been making records for over 40 years now. I know what a good tone is. I got records, you can listen to my tone and here I know what a good tone is. And for 50 bucks, this thing does it for me. Now I'm sure that I could spend 500 or 5,000 and get something that's got more bells and whistles on it. But at the end of the day, it's it's worth more to me than $1,000 boutique box, you know, especially that just recreates something that's already done. With this thing, I can tone shape, I can make it into my thing, as opposed to, you know, uh, partition number 31 eruption sound. I can't get into that presets. I watch your bedroom on the bedroom producer Mike. Really good points as always. Thanks for making. Thank you, Maddie. I thank you so much for taking and saying that. That means a lot to me. I really like this one. I really like this one because, again, like I said, I finally figured out, Scott, how to use that camera lens. That thing needs, the lighting needs to be set up a certain way. I had to toy with it and figure out it. It needs actually a backlighting to it, not a side light. Side lighting destroys it. You got to have a backlighting to it, or in my case, I have an adjustable light. I can go even underneath it, and so that was great. And thank you so much for watching that. Rock used to be a rebellion, a middle finger to the in sonic form. Now it's nostalgia. It needs someone to tear from the museum walls and give it a pulse again. Well, man, when you have Jimmy Page's guitars on display at the Met, then Metropolitan Museum, then where are you at? Where are you at? Is it supposed to be on display in a museum? Or is it supposed to be on a stage, whipping ass? I'll say this much about Greenie. Greenie's not sitting in a, in a museum. Greenie gets out there and gets played at least. So, I'm just saying. It's again, it's a viewpoint. So I find more meaning in restoring an old Greco. By the way, I have a shipment coming in this week, and I got to do I had to do restoration on an old Tokai, and I got my wood paint markers in that I think is going to make doing some of that work a lot easier. I tested them out on some wood samples and actually on a table that got kind of a ding in it when I moved here from Singapore, and I think that they're going to work out just fine. As a matter of fact, I can do fine detail work that I couldn't do before, that I was afraid of getting bleed when I was doing drop fills. This, I don't have to do drop fills. I can directly really, really get it to the surface. But I enjoy that, because when you fix a guitar, when you bring it back to life, you're even in that I'm doing something creative. There's a kind of a resurrection occurring there of sorts. And you're writing a new chapter for that guitar rather than repeating one. And when I see a 5-year-old girl playing Eruption, I'm just seeing her repeat something that's already been done. If I saw a 5-year-old girl playing Eruption and there was no such thing, Eddie Van Halen had never written it, it was just that 5 year, she just sat down and wrote, then I'd be blown away. But it's not a new chapter. It's really just a 5-year-old reading from a very, it's like a 5-year-old reading from Hamlet. Okay, cute, they can do it, but it's still just, you're just reading an old book. So in that regard, maybe losing the Guitar Hero gave us freedom, but that creativity, that freedom has come with a price tag in some cases. Don't forget, all your favorite bands had millions of dollars in promo behind them. There are also just yeah, that's the other thing too. You have some exceptions. Jimmy Page made all that. It took me years to figure out. It wasn't until I watched that Van Halen or was that a documentary? Something I was I guess it was again another music documentary. I'm watching about Page and John Paul Jones, especially doing their session work. And Jimmy Page was playing a lot of sessions, and he was banking that money away. And because he had the connection with Olympic Studios, he had been cutting sessions there. He was able to get a deal where he got a lockout rate for midnight to like 6 a.m. And he was able to produce that first Led Zeppelin album on his own dime, at a super discounted rate in the studio. And when he went to the record label Atlantic, that was a distribution deal only. He still had, all of the money from the physical. He owned the masters basically at the end of the day, and so that's why later on, fast forward, you see those guys in their own 747. Well, guess what? Because that's the kind of money that any other rock group should have been making had they had made those kind of moves that Jimmy Page made. Jimmy Page was able to do that because he's kind of smart guy, and also he knew the system. So that really blew me away because that let me know the kind of money that was involved at that time as well. Sure, and then of course, I guess the record label, the other guys in other bands who may not have known that at the time said, "Well, we want our own 747 too." And so yeah, there was a lot of the slush going on in order for it to keep the image up, to keep the mystique up, and things of that nature. And it's just not that kind of investment anymore. Where there's no money in mystique, nobody invested. Yeah, yeah, you know. So the next generation doesn't really seem to care about movie stars or idols or anything of that nature at all. They care more about expression, I suppose. Um, Less, I want to be Hendrix, but more, I want to sound like me. And that's good. That's what I've been saying all along, what we need. I mean, I like what I like because when I grew up, that's what I was liking. And I've written what I've written because it's a culmination of all the things that I like, plus me. I'd like to see the next generation of that. Um, I want to sound like me is the mantra of any true creative spirit. You'll see kids mixing jazz chords with metal tones. Or putting ambient textures in punk songs. I've seen that on YouTube. They don't care about the rule book. They're searching for they don't care about who approves. They're searching for a new thing, a tone, something that's grooving, you know. And honestly, if the guitar is involved in any of that process, then it's going to keep the guitar alive. Yeah, and the guitar solo may not be a big part of it, or but if it's still in there, then that's a good thing. And that's a good thing. The currency now is attention, not so much millions of dollars. Yes, it's the attention that makes you the millions of dollars. It's the cart before the horse, before the record, or we're going to make you a star. Well, now, you have to be a star before they'll make you a star. I never understood that. Like, I've got a million followers. What the frack do I need you for? What do I need you for? Well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And if you come down here and pledge this oath and put a little drop of blood on this Ouija board, we're really going to make things happen for you. Well, I really don't need that. I'm kind of happy where I'm at with my own thing, And so that kind of thing, is amazing to me. The attention currency. That again is a double-edged sword as well, I think. And it's got its pluses and minuses. Just a viewpoint kind of thing. You know, the guitar doesn't need to be saved. I see all these YouTube videos talking about the guitar needs to be saved. It just doesn't need to be saved, man. It just needs to be played. I always think. I'm like, it's gonna still get played because there's enough. Somebody's gonna be walking by and say, "Hey, what's that thing over there?" Let me pick it up and yeah, oh, okay. And you're either gonna dig it or not. But that's how it's always been. It's just one of those things. And we don't need another hero. We don't need another hero. We don't need it. We really don't. you know, what we just need is people who love the sounds of those strings vibrating, and hitting on the one. Other than that, everything else was a product of its era and its time, and those eras and times have moved on. You know, it just needs to be played. It doesn't need to be saved. It just needs to be played. And you know, I don't think again that the era of the guitar hero is over. I think it's transforming into something else. And what that something else is, I do not know. It's yet to be determined. To be determined. We'll see what the future holds. Hopefully, but in any case, those are my thoughts, guys. It's again kind of a two-parter in conjunction with what I was discussing in my regular video content. The whole beat culture fascinates me. Kids can now download a free beat record, a vocal on top, and release it this day. And again, like I said, the quality of that is not great in most cases. Not an important thing because early rap music, the quality of that stuff was kind of rough too, but it was created from nothing, or as opposed to taking something that's already created, and it's not, it's copy and paste. You know, sampling, people would say to me, "Well, that was copy and paste too." Well, it was a damn creative way of copy and pasting that I don't hear today. Okay, so great. Now you got all these samples of things that you're free to use. Why doesn't somebody come out with some unique way of putting those together like the Beastie Boys used to? You know, the Guitar God didn't die. The industry stopped building thrones for them. You're determined to come up with another alternate title. I like that so much, man. I might even steal that from you and make that the new title for this one. I like that one. They stopped building thrones for them. Correct. Correct. For a lot of reasons. That's a good one. I like that. Like, where's Prince? Oh, he's on the throne right now. Give him 5 minutes. He just had a burrito. They're brought up in a world it's hard to get them to practice drums. Yeah, or have a space. Yeah, but actually that's not even true anymore because there's electronic drums. You can plug it in and have a set of headphones and not really bother anybody. I don't know. I'm just saying that we're morphing into something else, and the old is no longer what it is. It isn't what it's not any. It's not what it was, and we just have to. But the quality is. I really will say that the quality is not there anymore. And getting back to my regular content video, there's no albums that are being created that out of a bedroom situation that are revolutionary. Um, Again, not saying that there's songs that come out of bedroom situation that are in the top 10. I'm just saying they're not because again, the bedroom is a comfort zone. You need to. I like working under a certain amount of pressure because, but which is why the "I'm good" thing really works under pressure because you have limited options and you learn how to work with the things that you got. So you're not wasting time in a time sensitive environment trying to figure out which friggin' plugin you're going to use. It all ties into each other. So these two discussions, that and tonight's, tie into each other. The overall theme, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, is where are we headed with all of this? Where is this going? And if you haven't had a chance, again, take a look over at Gary's. Scott was kind enough to put it up. Look at Gary's discussion, looking at it from another viewpoint as well. We need to think, gentlemen and ladies. We need to use this God given gift of reason and kind of reason things out instead of getting, AI is going to take over, everything. Um, yeah. Let me tell you about AI. And when it was mandated at Davos a year or so ago that AI was going to be the next thing, when they were doing that, they were doing it because they needed an economic driver. They needed the next thing, like, you can think your life, those things that are the next things that are supposed to create these jobs and stimulate these economies to keep things going just a little bit longer. And because things are so tenuous in the economies of the world, that they needed this new, thing that to invest in order to be an economic driver, that it became pervasive in their outlets, their media outlets. Let's talk about it in the media. Every other story is going to be AI in the magazines, of course. It trickles its way down into all the tables here at YouTube in one way or another. I'm sure AI, they're making an AI golf club. But the point of that is that that's the real nuts and bolts of it. And if it succeeds, it's an economic driver. If it fails, then we're going to have issues, a lot sooner than you think. So, but that's the whole push behind it. There's no conspiracy theory to that at all. You know, it's not a takeover of things. It's needed in order to continue to prop things up. I know a 26-year-old does the cane scenes, records albums live with a live band. Yeah, there's some hope. There's, like I said, but it's niche. It needs to get to a bigger market in order to have any major significance. Technology made music flawless and soulless. I agree. Guitar Heroes became legends because you could hear their mistakes. I agree. Slightly bent note, I agree. A solo teetering on that edge, I know that. Yeah, imperfection, I agree with that. That's why I like recording my stuff with mics and not plugins, and because there's things that get captured or reflections that get captured, when you're using microphones sometimes, that actually add to the, phantom sounds, ghost sounds that, are not taking away from the recording, but actually add to them. There's a lot to that. So I said we lost the quality of a lot of things when we went digital. All right, guys, I am going to go to bed because I am going to be frank with you. I am kind of tired, but I've enjoyed this live stream with everybody tonight. I've enjoyed the fact that we had so much engagement tonight, so many great thoughts. Um, you guys are just the best. I have to say it before. Yes, Eddie, I'm wrapping up here. I know. I'll get you something to eat here in a minute. He knows. He's like, hey, hey, you're about done, aren't you? But you guys are awesome. And I want to thank you so much for supporting me and listening and sharing. And hope you have a good week this week. God willing, I will see you this Wednesday with something else to talk about, hopefully. And we'll have lots of things to talk about, like Mr. Rogers. And you guys, until then, you take care. Bye bye.